One of the things that happens every single time at our national championship, at least since the college football playoff was created 10 years ago, is that all of the stakeholders, the decision makers, that this is a chance for them all to get together. Then they always have an annual meeting. And that annual meeting was yesterday. Now, a couple different things that we can peel off from this, but the headline is no news. But whether it's from executive director Rich Clark, who you might know is sort of in the Bill Hancock role as the one who oversees the board of managers, the board of directors, all the conference commissioners, or whether it is some of the comments from the conference commissioners themselves. They did not make any decisions for changes for the 2025 college football playoff season. They did not rule out any changes for the 2025 college football playoff season. So, reminder, if you're going to make a tweak before 2026, it has to be unanimous. They need to have all of the decision makers on the same side, all agreeing on it. However, it does seem like we are getting some interesting comments from those inside in terms of being willing to address the seeding and the ranking. Also, maybe not for next year. We're starting to get maybe some more conversations about on-campus games, and then much, much more. Bud, what did you end up taking away from what we're hearing coming out of some of those meetings?
I just don't know what leverage that the SEC and Big Ten are willing to give up to get like the Mountain West or the MAC to vote for changes for the 2025-2026 playoff. Like, I mean, clearly, not clearly. In my opinion, I think most of our opinions, auto bids are okay. Auto buys a little bit less so. It did make the playoff a little wonky. I mean, I still enjoyed it. We still had a lot of really good games in the playoff, but I would probably like to see auto buys go away or at least changed a little bit and probably alter the seating stuff. But for this specific year, we have to have unanimous voting. And I just don't know, like, what's the carrot that you're going to dangle to get some of these smaller conferences to vote in favor of that? Is it some nebulous promise that you probably can't be held to? Right? Yeah.
Don't you think that's it, Bud? Like, wait till you see what we're going to do. Like, you think you had it rough. Like, we could really make it rough on you, I guess.
So it's more stick than carrot.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Yes. With the 2026 and beyond, like the 2026 to 2032 does not require unanimous. And if the people who've got the power believe they've got the votes to force through whatever they want, whether it is a 3-3-2-2-1-1 hike or whether it is an expansion or SEC and Big Ten automatically guaranteed buys for the champions. And there's lots of different ways that they could play with the format. To me, that's what the negotiations are, is like, you can play nice now, but we will then have to get our way a little bit later. Greg Sankey Greg Sankey had a vengeful tone when he said, I will not forget about those who pushed back, because we should have had the college football playoff before the 2024 season. It was voted down by the Alliance, that voting block that was asking for a 12-month holistic review of the sport. And, maybe the Pac-12 is still together if that doesn't happen. Florida State most certainly makes the college football playoff after going 13-0 and being ACC champions. There's a lot of revisionist history there, but I do think that the fact that Greg Sankey, mentioned that he remembered those who stood in their way and caused all the headaches when they thought they had the job done leads me to believe that that's at least a threat, even if it's not explicitly mentioned. It is an implicit threat that, like, we do take notes, we do keep receipts from what happens with these negotiations.
So, question for you: like, I was out at the Battle 7-on-7 all day yesterday, so I really didn't see some of the quotes. We think there's a chance that the bowl games seed to home games starting in 26. Like, I missed kind of the quotes in that, or do we think that's more
Rich,
of like
executive director Rich Clark? This is one thing that a lot of people are asking him about, and he said, we thought we are certainly going to discuss it. We thought that the on-campus games made for an incredible experience, and the College Football Playoff Invitational is a television show, and the television show looked awesome with the on-campus games. Now, you're right that if you're going to give more on-campus games, you're going to take away from bowl games that are really counting on this. But I do think that does appear to be some momentum towards increasing the on-campus presence. I would bet that does not happen for 25, but it does at least sound like at the very top of the decision-making chain, they are entertaining it for 26.
Okay.
And I think we should continue pushing for it for 26, because I don't think it'll happen for 25. I don't think there's really going to be any major changes to the playoff next year, because like you said, there needs to be, unanimous consent to do anything. And I don't think you're going to get it, because there's always going to be a conflict of interest for somebody but I do think that trending towards, as Bud mentioned, getting rid of the auto buys. And then if you can do it to where there are more home games, what you can also do is what the NFL does. You can reseed. So that way the number 1 seed will get to host the quote unquote worst team remaining in the second round at home, because without the bowl tie-ins and without having to do that kind of travel stuff and have everything kind of, aligned for that, it gives you more freedom to do that. Because it's like, if you're the 12th seed in the playoff, you're a Clemson fan. We're playing Texas this week. If we win next week, we're going to Oregon. So it's like it allows a fan base to kind of plan ahead if they want to do that. So it alleviates some of the problems that currently doing it would give you. So I do think that I think fans and media should kind of pressure them to do that. We should keep talking about it until they finally do it.
You know what else I think they're starting to realize? Like, if you have to go, so if we increase those, like in theory, you would lose some of those bowl games. They're realizing it doesn't really matter who's playing those bowl games, so they'll just put other teams in the bowls and people will still watch.
Yeah.
I think that's ESPN's probably fired up. They're like, sweet, you guys want to do on home campus? Those will rate off the charts. We'll get more inventory and we'll still keep all the bowls we have in. So what if the team is 7-5 or 6-6 or even 5-7? We'll fill them and people will watch. We'll fill those slots.
The ratings for the bowls this year have been fine.
Yeah. Which is I think it speaks to what we talked about. Like, people are home a lot during December, and you can only talk to your family so much. So they're going to put it on, even if you like them. It's what if we, instead of reseeding, what if the number 1 seed got to pick?
I'd love that too.
That's TV drama, man.
I know.
That's what we should do.
Listen, can we get there?
That's how much content we get. Why did Oregon choose them?
We
have all the head coaches in a room, right? And then say the number 1 seed this year, it's Oregon. And they're all standing there, and Dan Lanning has to walk up and down the line of coaches, and he just sits there and looks him in the eyes, and then he stops and says, I choose you.
No, that's 2035 vision. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Does any sport in the world do that?
No.
Choosing? No.
WWE. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we can have tests. We can have tests.
It works for them.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think while I completely agree with the drama factor in the television product, that does feel like we're speed running to the end of college football. That needs to be needs to be our last thing that we've got.
Jump on this thing, man.
All right, one last sort of note just on the college football playoff side of this. A few more notes, and then our full Ohio State props and thoughts. Is there anything else that's not being discussed that you would want? Because Tom, you mentioned that we would want to push. I know Rich Clark, the executive director of the college football playoffs, is a big fan of the podcast. So is there any other message that we would want to send to him and the other decision makers in the room?
No.
I hope they are thinking ahead on the 14. I mean, I'm sure they are, but are there things that we think, hey, the problems are probably eradicated going from 12 to 14, but the 14 will have new problems or new, not problems, just issues that maybe, could have been foreseen had we really thought about it. And if so, what are they? Right. We ran through the 14 exercise on this show, and it actually worked out pretty nice. Do we think it's just going to be just like Big Ten, SEC automatic as the 2 buys in the 14? Or it's just, how are they going to stack those rules to favor those 2 leagues? I mean, they have favored nation status for sure, but is it going to be just so nakedly, hey, they get the first 2 no matter what? Or how are they going to do that?
I don't know. I'll tell you what I would want. So Rich Clark said he's had some discussion with the NFL and that Roger Goodell has agreed to talk about the scheduling. Reporting as of this morning, I saw, our friend Brett McMurphy, the Action Network, he's talking about some of the changing dates of we're going to move from Dallas to Tampa for one of these future title games. And guys, I was looking at the dates here. We're going to have title games on January 24th. we're going to have title games on January 25th. I mean, like, and this is like, I don't think
Can we move this stuff up?
I don't think that it's even, you know, if you're going to talk to the NFL about trying to, you know, tweak what's going to happen around those like semifinals so you don't have to play them on a Thursday and a Friday night. And why don't you just try to like move all of this up and really start to think about the calendar? And if we're going to look at the transfer portal calendar, let's look at the college football playoff calendar as well, because that we are sitting here on the Monday morning of our national championship game, and all anybody's talking about is Mark Andrews. Like, I mean, it's just there is some, like, if we're going to acknowledge,
I think there are other things people are talking about today.
Sure, the Eagles
Mark
have been allowed
Andrews,
in the playoffs with how Jalen hurt. Yeah,
Tom, fair. But I think that it is something where it is just dragging so far. If you're going to be afraid of the NFL with scheduling your semifinal games on a Thursday and Friday night, why are you then inviting just getting swallowed up by the NFL playoffs? Because the deeper that you go into this, I think that the sporting public as a whole is finding it harder to keep that motor going for college football when the big monster is just out there roaring with the countdown to the Super Bowl.
I will say, just like behind the scenes stuff here at home, like Lynn was asking me, she's like, so you've probably got a lot of HQ stuff today. I was like, no, not really. She's like, why not? It's just because they're talking NFL playoffs.
It's the economy of time. There's only but so many blocks in an hour.
And I did NBA highlights this morning, so
no way. You tell me Zach and Brandon brought you on and you were just out there giving them
I was there waiting like through 2 NBA segments. It was great. Yeah.
Yeah.
So about our Magic getting healthy, like playoff, deep playoff run coming next year.
Coming next year. There you go.
Yeah.
So that would be my plea is if we're looking at the calendar for everything else, when I was seeing those early national title game dates, we're pushing this thing to January 24th, January 25th. That doesn't feel like it's got as much momentum, you know, roar as much as it is just sort of like dragging itself to the finish line. I know it doesn't feel like that if you're an Ohio State fan. I know it doesn't feel like that if you're a Notre Dame fan. And maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm missing that. But just that's the general sense that I'm getting.
Would you have to start the season earlier though?
Or come about the next part, maybe start to rethink that conference championship game weekend.
Or what would you guys think about playing kickoff week? I think the networks would absolutely love this. Like, we have, you know, games every single night in August because nobody wants to play day games in August, except with the exception like some of the Big Ten teams. You know, like, so in the more temperate climates, maybe you have like kickoff week where like the Big Ten goes, you know, during the daytime for kickoff, you know, and then like the SEC and ACC and all the warm places, you know, that they go nighttime. It does suck as a fan to have to travel like on a Wednesday to a game, but it could be a cool thing. I think it would draw a lot of attention to the sport because you're not competing against NFL, you're competing against NFL, you know, preseason games. And it would help
for you.
Yeah.
What do you think the temperature is in Chicago in August during the day?
It's hot.
65?
I will say I got the worst sunburn of my life in Chicago, actually, because I was like, whatever, I'm a Florida boy, like this, like no cloud cover. It was
not as hot. See, Tom doesn't know.
You can play a noon game in Chicago.
It's in
and
the
like
90s.
It's in the 90s, but it feels like 80.
Daddy, come on, man.
Humid. Come on.
Tell him. Yeah, that's different.
I have been in Florida in the summer, and I have been in Chicago in the summer, and it's different in Florida. But 95 is 95, no matter where the hell you are.
All right, let's trade. Tom, go do my yard work. I'll do Tom's yard work one day in the summer. We'll live stream it.
Dude, there's humidity here too. I don't know what.
I mean, there is another weekend in there, and as much as I hate it, I do think, and you know, people have been trashing it. I love the fact that Army and Navy get the treatment they do, but that would be the weekend to kind of circle potentially as putting games on that weekend. You know, and like I love the game, and I don't I know it's a standalone. But they might have issues because of the American. I mean, this year, I think it's significantly impacted the American Championship game. You know, because Army had to play that week before, and I think they were dragging into that game a little bit. You know, so like that's a weekend you could look at, and I think there's still a way you could respect it and pay your tributes to it, but then allow other games. Like there's a week there. But to see the other thing is player safety. They like having the time off to get players healthy. So I think we're stuck with this for the foreseeable future.
Okay.